like the Howard Stern show.
Randy warned me about that. All right. Welcome to EMC Crossover. I am Jesse Kiefer, and I'm filling in for network producer Randall Sylvie, and I am 1/3 of the hosting team for the Grawlix podcast and also host of the Turning Cartwheels podcast. And tonight I am joined by Dustin Smothers of the Pro Wrestling Iowa podcast. Hello.
How's it going, everybody? How's it going? Happy International Podcast Day, everyone. What a glorious day to be alive.
What a glorious day indeed. And also, Dustin is our Undertaker, like to throw a pro wrestling thing in there. He's got the streak. He is currently the EMC member that has been on the most crossover episodes, all of the crossover episodes so far.
I think this puts me 4-0, or is it 3-0? One of the two.
4-0. This would be like, well, this is a special, so I don't know if it'll get a number, but that would put you 4-0. Yes.
So this would be your Jake the Snake match at WrestleMania 8.
Absolutely. Actually, he debuted at 7, 8, 9, 10. He faced King Kong Bundy. This is my King Kong Bundy.
So that other voice that you're hearing is Brandon Lapani of the Technology Geek podcast and the Survivalist podcast. Brandon, hello.
Jesse, thank you for having me on the program today on National Podcast Day.
Yes, international.
Coming right off of National Coffee Day.
Oh, awesome. So back to back holidays.
I need hand in hand.
I need both of those in my life all the time.
I just made myself an espresso, so I'm really ready to podcast right now.
All right.
I love podcasting.
And the jitters start in. We're coming tonight because it's, we're podcasters on a podcast network, and today's International Podcast Day. So we're going to talk about Luke Cage.
Sweet Christmas, everybody.
Shouldn't we? I don't know. Everything is happening today, like a lot of releases happening today. But
I've only seen the first episode. I got the first episode.
We should point out that
yes.
We should point out that unfortunately Randy, our founder, could not be with us tonight. But he is here with us overwatching this production.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's here with us in spirit for sure.
This is 1984, and Big Brother is watching right now.
He is watching, so I'm a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. No, so you said you actually cracked the seal on that? You've done one episode?
One episode. My son goes to preschool from 12:10 to 3:10. It's about 20 minutes from me. So just enough time to get in one episode in between having to actually take him and then go back and get him from school today. So great vibe from the show. The music is spot on. So the acting's great. I'm so intrigued. I know Luke Cage. I know Power Man. I know about, Heroes for Hire. But I don't know a lot about the origin of Luke Cage, the experiment, what you have. So I'm very excited for this show.
Cool. Brandon, have you had a chance to crack the seal on this show?
I got off an airplane like 3.5 hours ago.
So no. That's a big no. Because depending on what airline you fly, you don't even get Wi-Fi.
Well, considering as soon as somebody saw I had a Samsung phone, they're like, "Don't turn that on. Don't turn that on."
Bomb. Dude, a bomb. We're not going to say it, but a bomb is on the plane.
I'm like, dude, it's an S7. It's not a Galaxy Note. Okay, there's nothing to worry about.
You had to set that record straight a few times, I'm sure.
Now, and that's when you say, now the app that I have on this phone you should worry about, but the phone itself is totally fine.
But my phone is totally the bomb.
What's that?
You can't say bomb on an airplane.
Yeah, it's to meet the parents. Bomb, bombity, bombity, bomb.
That's where I was going with it. I was hoping somebody was going to pick it up.
Yes. Okay, so it being International Podcast Day, and all of that is like podcast.
We've gotten off to a great start. We're already.
We have. I feel like this is.
We have.
What not to say in a plane.
We have to talk about the elephant in the room, though.
What's that?
Is TNA going to have a show?
Oh.
You're going to buy them. You have to know.
Let's get this out of the way. Dustin, what's going on here? Is WWE going to own everything?
if you had to ask me my gut feeling, I don't believe TNA is going to procure the finances to go live on Sunday. An interesting scenario that I know I've talked to a few people last night in between shots of Fireball and getting chopped in the chest by Michael Elgin last night. I was talking to a few people, and we all came to the conclusion. We think WWE would finance the Bound for Glory show as a send-off, much like they did the Nitro show as the company went out of business. You never know, though. TNA has been the most resilient company that defies logic as far as how a business should be run. I do know that the debt far outweighs what the company's worth, and I think Billy Corgan's a fool to even think about purchasing it. If it was me, I would let the thing die, go bankrupt, and pick up the ashes. But I don't want to see WWE buy it just because particularly I hate to see guys have one less place to work and make some money. But if WWE does, the network just became even more of a value.
No doubt.
Think about all those early Wednesday night pay-per-view. I was in college. I didn't have pay-per-view. I never saw any of those, like the original TNA shows at the Asylum in Nashville. And they've had great runs in the company. Think about Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe, their first matches with each other.
Sting.
Yeah, and that's the great thing too. The one positive, if WWE were to buy the tape library, we can suddenly talk about where AJ Styles spent most of his career, where Sting was 16 years between his WCW and WWE run. Plus Samoa Joe's been there. You got Bobby Roode in the company. Even CM Punk, if they ever meant fences with him, he spent some time in TNA in the early days. So there's a lot of pluses and negatives to both sides of it, but it wouldn't surprise me one way or the other. But my gut says this is the end.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to need a place to work after that UFC fight he just came off of.
Oh, my gosh. Did you guys see his ear after that? Have you ever seen someone's ear so cauliflowered up after a fight?
No, I haven't.
Oh.
And let me tell you, Dana White actually said right after, he's like, I don't think you should have another fight in the UFC. And I'm like, wow, he even said, he goes, yeah, I'm not, we're looking at options right now. I'm like, well, that's not a good sign at all.
Well, now here's the thing to think about with Punk. He's got a contract, I think 2 more fights with UFC. Does UFC really, I mean, he's still a draw. I think people would still tune in, not as many, but I think people would still tune into a second fight, and maybe you have that on Fox. Maybe you have that on one of the Fox Fight Nights or something like that to pop a rating. But do you really want to give Punk up to like Bellator or let him go anywhere else? I mean, so I do think Punk will fight in the UFC again, but it's going to be a considerable amount of time.
I know what I would do with him. I would put him as, I don't know if they're even doing this anymore, but I would make him one of the coaches of Ultimate Fighter.
Well, and I've heard there was one thing being bandied about for a while, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Punk going to compete on Ultimate Fighter. So, there's a lot of things.
I think that would. I mean, they did that with Kimbo Slice too. If you remember, it was they hyped up the 2 main coaches, and then and Kimbo Slice. They used them as a little extra draw for the.
Sure.
I mean, I could see them doing that.
Absolutely. No, it'll be an interesting week with wrestling indeed. So I'm reading an article right now. Corgan thinks Bound for Glory will happen. That's a good headline.
Was it? He's the guy from Smashing Pumpkins, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see him go out like that. If they're going to go out, they might as well go out on a high note.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Okay, so International Podcast Day. So last year we kind of asked the question, and I felt like maybe it would be a good way to open the show, which we're already into, this year, to just ask the question, why podcasts? There's still radio out there. So why podcasts? And so what drew you into it in the first place? Whoever wants to jump on that.
I think mine will be a little more abbreviated, but it really boils down to, in my niche area of professional wrestling discussion, I already did that every week with my friends on the phone. We would talk after Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views. We'd spend a half hour breaking them down anyway, what we liked and didn't like. And it just was the natural progression for me. It's like, well, if I'm already going to do this, let's record it and see if anybody wants to listen to it and see if we can monetize that from a certain perspective or what we can do with it. But it also is a great creative outlet for me. I'm not in a particular line of work where I get a lot of my soul fulfilled, so to speak. So having this as a creative outlet is really a big part of my life, and I don't know what I would do without it now. So it's something in one form or another I'll be doing for the rest of my life if it's still a thing.
Sure. Brandon?
Well, I think mine is a little more, I guess, a little bit of a longer story. I'll shorten it down. It started out for me, obviously, with radio. Started out at 13 with ham radio, and then started listening to the legends of radio, Coast to Coast AM, Art Bell, Howard Stern, Opie and Anthony. Went to college for computer technology and started worked at a very early satellite radio company. Really said there's no future there, so moved on to other things. But to me, I always wanted to be an on-air guy, and unfortunately, those jobs are few and far between. And with podcasting, you kind of get to be that on-air guy, in your own way. Mm-hmm. Maybe not on the scale of a satellite radio or an AM FM radio, but you do get to be that guy, which is a lot of fun. So that was really what it was for me, and big part of my life since I was a kid. And this is maybe not radio, but I guess the future of radio, I tend to think. So that's my story with it.
You popped me hard when you mentioned Art Bell. I love that dude. I'm so into the paranormal and all that, so I just absolutely eat up anything he does.
Well, and I'll tell you a funny story about that, since it is National Podcast Day. Now kids have gotten so accustomed to downloading the show, and when he did his comeback, I remember every morning when I was driving my daughter to school, I'd download his show, which was available streaming live, but then on podcast. And my daughter, we'd listen to it, some of that. Well, a couple of years ago, we were my parents were cleaning out their home that I've lived in most of my life, and I was finding some of my old cassette tapes of Art Bell because he was on so late at night that I couldn't stay up and listen to the whole show, so I'd record it on cassette. And my daughter's like, "Daddy, what do you have cassette tapes for? Why don't you just download it?" And I'm like, "This is 1993 or 94. There's no internet yet. You can't download audio yet." Mm-hmm. Like, so I just shows you how the industry has changed. Years ago, I was recording shows on, 10, 20 years later, where somebody's going to download this in their phone later tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's just really neat how the industry has changed.
You're right. Right.
When I talked about this a little bit last year when we did the podcast special for the network, which was just basically three of us at that time, and now the network has grown. So that also kind of shows you just how quickly podcasts can kind of catch on. So I won't give the same answer that I gave last year, but basically we had a class in high school that was it was a creative writing class, and it was also like a media class, because like in education, if you don't have the dollars, what do? You combine things. So half of the class was like creative writing, like poetry and stuff. And then the other half of the class was you had to put on like a video or a radio show or something. And so that's what I opted to do, was to do the radio assignment. And we had to like put together like a 5-minute spot, and it had to have like stings and transitions and ads and all that. And I really just enjoyed that to the point where, even though that was an assignment, my buddy Ben Kruger and I, who is the spearhead for Lost No Longer Productions, we would do like radio shows just for fun. Like we basically took that assignment and we were continuing to do it just on our own, just for the heck of it. So this just seemed like a natural progression. Like when Randy asked me to be on one of his early podcasts, he'd already had several podcast episodes under his belt, but I was like, yeah, I'd love to give that a try. And then it kind of harkens back to what Dustin said. I talk about comic books all the time anyways, so why not do it in a venue where people might respond, where we might have a dialogue? And that just really appealed to me.
I want to point out, too, that one of the things that the Electronic Media Collective does is Randy has a very much he doesn't interfere with, like a lot of networks. The person that's running the network has a lot of input into the show, and Randy kind of lets us all do our own thing, but he also does a lot to help help people kind of get their show out there and stuff like that. This network started obviously with just you guys, and then I jumped on board. And when I emailed Randy, I remember saying, I want to join the network, and he was like, "Yeah, come on board." It's very much a warm, welcoming. You have a podcast and you want to get yourself on a network with a bunch of great people, definitely reach out to Randy, because he definitely will be,
Yes. Yeah. Find him he's all over the place too. Like you can find him at Randall Sylvie on Twitter for sure. And then also at Grawlix Podcast is kind of the show that we highlight a lot between him and I. So you can get a hold of him pretty easily if you do a quick search for him.
Well, Jesse,
if you don't mind,
go ahead.
Can I just jump into the tech portion of podcasts real quick for just a second?
Yeah.
Podcasting really was a whole industry that Apple pretty much started. You remember with the iPod, that industry was really starting to take a podcast industry. Really took on a life of its own once the iPhone came out. Before the iPhone, you remember you had to download the podcast and get it on your Nano or get it on your iPod Classic. About being able to download the podcast directly to your phone, really, or stream it, really kind of invented a whole new industry out there. Before that, if you remember, satellite radio was the big thing there for a while. That was really hurting AM, FM radio. And then podcasting kind of came along and kind of really, I don't want to say hurt radio, but it really did, because now people can get anything they want on demand because of the iPhone or the Android.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say, Jesse, you brought up that struck a chord with me. I'd kind of forgotten about it. Sometimes when you listen to somebody talk and it triggers a memory in your brain. I remember having a walk, like the talk boy from Home Alone. And,
oh yeah.
And I would record songs off of MTV and then record myself as like a disc jockey, like saying that was, No Doubt with Tragic Kingdom or whatever you might have.
Oh, you were a VJ.
Yeah. So and it would just, and I would say I was a DJ, and I remember playing it for my friends, and I was probably like 11 and playing it for my friends, being like, yeah, lying to them and because my dad lived in Des Moines. I lived with my mom down in Southern Iowa. And so I would lie to my, the kids on my dad's block in Des Moines that I was on the radio. And this was my show. I would play it back for him. And I mean, just thinking about, I always was drawn to the idea of talking for a living anyway. And to an extent, I think that's, I've been successful in food service, customer service, that realm, because I love talking. And podcasting, I think, is the natural fit for me.
Awesome. And Brandon, you were talking about the tech side of thing. So piggybacking on both of those, you're like, now that we are podcasters, now that we're living the dream, what are the podcasting aspects that you like the most? And then there's got to be some that you don't love as much. What are the best and worst things about podcasting?
Well, I think the best things about it is it has opened up, let's be real about the three of us sitting here probably won't get a job at Sirius.
Right.
Man, this is a rough day.
I shouldn't say that, because I had a job, but I wasn't on the air. I was the whipping boy for the tech stuff.
I say you just burst my bubble, man.
Yeah, I know. The odds and chance of us all being on-air personalities, there's very slim of that happening. Those jobs are few and far between. But in this case with podcasting, it opened up that guys like you and I can do this, and that's a great thing about it. If what are the odds that we'd be able to do something like this on satellite, or be able to do something like this on an AM or FM station? It wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
This gives us the platform to be able to do that. And I think Google, with the addition of Hangouts, which is what we're using to record this show, everybody having broadband in their home has really been great, that people can do this. And people like Dustin, like you said, he can, this is a creative thing for him. He wouldn't know what he did if he didn't do this. And, you have to think about what would you be doing right now if you weren't sitting here? It's kind of.
I'd be watching Luke Cage. I will tell you that.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, that's true.
Yeah. But the only bad thing that is about podcasting though, and I see it a lot, and I'm sure you guys see it too, is when it first. Well, I guess I was in really early, so I'm not sure who But when you got in really early, it was a lot of. Now it still is a lot of fun, but now a lot of people have created whole industries on it. Jesse and I have talked about this many times. When you listen to the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast, there are so many advertisements on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
you can
crazy.
Pretty much skip.
So I think
Jericho too. You can just skip the first 20 minutes typically. It's usually just loaded with advertisements.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Kind of bad thing that has happened is people have used it for, and I understand people have to make a living. I have no problem. Hey, if I can make a living just doing this an hour a day, I would too. But the problem is people eventually at some point at the beginning there was hardly any shows with ads because it was basically just for fun. But then people realized, hey, we can turn this into a business. And now the bad part is you have now I don't want to say are at the bottom because that's not the right word, but when it first started podcasting, shows like this could be the #1 show, but then once you started adding in the Corollas of the world and the Leo Laportes and the Stone Cold Steve Austins, it made it a little bit harder for guys like us to kind of get to the top of the charts. It still can be done, but it's a little more challenging when we don't have that built-in audience like those guys do. So,
and I think
that's kind of the bad part about it.
For me, I see an opposite effect sometimes because I talk to people who listen to my shows and they appreciate the lack of ads and just the realness that we bring to our show. And they say that they don't, they prefer that over some of these very rehearsed, very ad driven programming. They like to listen to an hour and a half of talk as opposed to an hour and a half show that's maybe more or less, 55, 60 minutes of content. So, I think it just depends on the taste of the listener and what they like. But I think that's why there's a niche, obviously for me in my realm out there, because I think there's fans that don't want to listen to all the extra stuff.
I want to just kind of piggyback that for just a second because talking about what Brandon just said and talking about what you just said, in the traditional radio model, you would have basically a broadcast range. And so, for what you're doing with the Iowa Pro Wrestling podcasting for Iowa, do you think that helps you, or would it be nicer to? Does it help you to have a global audience, or would it be nicer to have a more localized broadcast area?
Well, for me, obviously for people who listen to my show, they know the kind of history. But I didn't actually start Pro Wrestling Iowa.
Right.
Brad LaFrat did, and that's why when I kind of took things over, I tried to make sure we started adding WWE programming post shows, like specials about the WWE programming, so that way we weren't exclusively just covering local professional wrestling. But I feel like also here locally, my role is as an ambassador to the scene. Without getting too crazy into specifics, I've been granted access in the last 6 months that I never thought I would have to the local companies here, Impact Pro Wrestling, 3XW. I just managed a week ago at a show. Yeah. I got to be a manager.
We were just talking about that on Grawlix. We were looking at the photos, and there's some incredible photos for that event.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. It was a blast. But I mean, without this podcast, I wouldn't be getting to do any of this. I just did a live post show from the Impact Pro Wrestling show with Michael Elgin. I got chopped. I got chopped by Michael Elgin last night. I mean, these are things that I would never get to do if I hadn't joined this podcast. And so I see it from everywhere. We get followers from all over the world, all over the country. It just depends on what they catch of ours. The local people know they're going to get local professional wrestling coverage on the Pro Wrestling Iowa podcast. They also know that I'm going to do preview and post shows for those now. And I think there's people that only listen to our WWE content. So I feel like we're trying to lay the table for a little bit of something for everyone. But I do have ideas and thoughts about future rebranding and how I might alleviate the localization of the show, but I can still keep it very much grounded in the Midwest scene at least. But that's years away as I try to build my empire, so to speak.
So back to the question, what do you think are the best and worst things about podcasting right now?
Oh, me?
For you?
Personally, sometimes for my show, it's hard to, if there isn't it's a slow news week in professional wrestling, that can cause us some issues. But I'm pretty neutral on it. I don't have anything that I hate about the process. I don't really edit my shows too hard because it's such a just discussion format. There's not, I've not had any complaints from anybody that listens since we went from editing heavily to not editing. And it's easier to get these things up in a timely fashion after the show. I mean, I pride myself on usually having our post shows up within an hour and a half after a show ends. For positive, it's just really creatively, it's an outlet. And that's, to me, I think if you're doing this and not having fun, I don't know what the point is.
Right.
Well, you're also looking at it from a standpoint where you don't have to monetize it either.
Mm-hmm. Not yet.
Some of these, right. Some places have to edit and because they have to produce a profit at the end of the day.
Right.
A little bit different, but I do agree with you that it is nice to hit that global audience, because regular radio is so localized, and that was one of the reasons why Howard Stern left regular radio and went to satellite, because anybody that bought a radio could listen to him. It expanded his horizons, and that's the same thing with this. You could hit a global audience where if you were on regular FM radio, you'd only hit what area. So I think you're onto that with you're able to hit a bigger audience. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, and I think it really does boil down to the niche I'm in. It's easy to draw in. I mean, with Twitter and being able to hashtag things and ride the coattails of other events, and when you distribute your show on Twitter, if it's a Thursday night, I'm hashtagging Impact Wrestling. I'm tagging that, just the things you can do like that in this niche world of professional wrestling, I think benefit. And I mean, I'm sure you guys see that with Grawlix as well, in the comic book realm.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know, like today, Luke Cage being released today, that's a huge thing that we can kind of capitalize on, and that'll be a focus of our. What's that?
Jesse, you've got a huge echo.
Oh, is it somebody have a speaker on or anything?
I'm not hearing it.
Okay. Well, hopefully YouTube's not hearing it then.
Sorry about that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Like Luke Cage being released, it's a huge opportunity both for us to hashtag that and also as content for the show. I mean, we might have a plan for the upcoming episode, but if something's going on, then we want to go ahead and tap into that because, social media and SEO opportunities are there. So why wouldn't we latch onto it? Mm-hmm. As far as like what were my favorite, like best and worsts of podcasting, I really like the interaction. I really like the crafting. Like I like designing a show, like right up to and including the release. But I don't like the audio production as much. Like if something goes wrong, I don't mind problem solving that, but I don't know how to do it very well. So it's kind of frustrating because I have a lot of trial and error on that end. And so that's where having Randy on the network to produce things is really nice because he can take a look at these things and he can kind of just see it. Whereas I'm like, what's going on here? Why do I sound like I'm in a cave? Why do I have an echo? That's where it's like he's indispensable to me for sure. Mm-hmm. He's a great resource.
Well, for me, I've been teaching myself all of this on the fly. I knew how to utilize social media, and that's about as far as my experience in creating content, producing, editing, anything started. And it's been a journey. I remember the first time I was putting one of our shows together after Brad had quit. It took me 4 or 5 hours of just torture trying to get it right. And I personally, for the amount of shows we do, I think if I just did the one show each week, I'd probably focus a little bit more on fine-tuning audio, editing. My goal when I do my shows is to get them up in a timely manner, following an event, and then ensure that it sounds good in headphones. That's my key first, and then I just test it without the headphones, and if it doesn't sound awful, we're good to go.
Sure.
Well, you're also dealing with information that's time sensitive as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and especially I prefer to record in person with people, but it doesn't work. Especially having Darnell on the show in New York. But I'm looking at ways. Every day I try to read a little bit more about like what I can do with Audacity, which is what I use, and just other programs. And I'm looking at new mics, things like that. I hope to be able to procure a couple microphones to send out to Darnell and one to Kevin to clear up our audio issues here in a few months. But for now, without really worrying about making money on the show, it's not a top priority. But as I move forward into the future, I really want to try to attempt to monetize the site, and because as people know, it's not just a podcast. We have an entire website with writers now and things like that. So it's all coming. It was an adventure I didn't plan on taking as much as I have, but
There's some good courses on like udemy.com for like utilizing Audacity, because that's what I use as well. I'm not sure what Randy uses, and I don't know what Brandon uses. I would assume GarageBand. Is that fair to say? Or
yeah, we basically use Max for all our production. I don't know if Dustin knows or not, but one of the things I own a company that we basically focus on cloud and development and content creation, website development, stuff like that. So I do have availability to quite a bit of stuff. So. But we mostly use Max for the audio stuff, because you just can't beat a Mac for audio at times. But if you're interested in Audacity, there are tons of tutorials and stuff on YouTube. Mm-hmm. There actually is if you go to Audacity's YouTube page, somebody actually spent the time, and there is a step-by-step guide on. They're like maybe 30-minute videos, so there's a whole thing on there if you're interested. I think they've got like 20 hours of training. So it's
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Well, that's cheaper than Udemy then. maybe check YouTube first, because I bought Udemy course, and that's maybe a little more expensive.
Udemy may be laid out maybe a little better. I mean, it's a course rather than a video step by step, but they do have a lot of good step by step videos. I'm not an Audacity expert. I really know GarageBand really well, but I've had, I'm sure you could probably sit and watch the videos and get it down pretty quick.
I'm a pretty quick learner.
So that's another thing too that I think we should bring up on podcast day, because Dustin, you cover a lot of the wrestling news, but I do a lot of the tech news stuff. And what's interesting about that is you, as well as a lot of our podcasts can't be recorded in advance. I know Jesse and Randy record like almost a week ahead of time. Grawlix a lot of times, and a couple of my friends, they record 3-4 episodes at a time. You and we really can't record stuff in advance.
No, and it can be a big, like if I have to, like we record the main show on Wednesday nights to air to go up on Thursday morning, and there have been times where I've had timing issues. We've had to record on Tuesday, and of course something big happens. Like a couple weeks back is my birthday week. My birthday fell on a Wednesday, so I wanted to record on a Tuesday, and Alberto Del Rio and Paige got suspended on Wednesday, and that was not part of our show on Thursday, and it was sort of embarrassing.
Oh, and you're a huge Paige fan too, so
yes,
people were probably like looking for your reaction to that.
Oh, we've given plenty of reaction since then.
Well, the only thing that I do that sometimes I get annoyed with is, and I've seen it as well, not only with technology, but with wrestling. You see all these people all the time that they do podcasts live from events, mm-hmm. and that's all well and good. But I can't picture myself or Dustin having the time or the financing, to be able to fly to do a show live from an event. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and that's where I've actually, just last night I did my first live Periscope stream from Impact Pro Wrestling's show. it was an adventure. It didn't turn out the greatest. I've learned a few lessons last night and what I want to do moving forward. But I'm trying to branch out into that video realm a little bit with it. And I think I'm in a unique position to be able to create content in my backyard, essentially, and in the professional wrestling world. And I've got a pretty good relationship with Troy Peterson, the owner at Impact Pro Wrestling. And I've got a good relationship, for the most part, with the guys over at 3XW as well, when they come back around and start running shows here. But that's the kind of thing I will do locally. And even when I go to Mania every year, Darnell goes with me, and we're planning on doing some cool stuff down there when we're in Orlando this year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because like I was watching like all this week, the YouTube has been loaded with people doing podcasts from Microsoft Ignite.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, as much as I'd like to do that, I don't know if I have the $2,000 to shill out to go to Ignite,
Well, it's just like for me, my model of what I want to do with Pro Wrestling Iowa or whatever it becomes is from the Collider movie crew. I saw them on YouTube, and then they were originally with AMC Movie News, and then they merged with Collider and all that. And I love their shows from the floor at Comic-Con. Like I sat in my living room and watched YouTube all week long, everything they put out. But yeah, it'd be great to get to a point where I could professionally produce content like live from like a WWE pay-per-view someday, but it's a pipe dream.
So since we're talking about podcasting, and this is Jesse's show, and he should be asking the questions, but what do you guys think?
I didn't.
You've hijacked the show, Brandon.
I've always been, and you can ask Jesse too, I've always been a pretty strong interviewer.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you guys think? Audio podcast or video podcasting?
I think once it's video, it's a video. It's not even a podcast at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my opinion on it.
I do appreciate the term vlog. I do think that's the way to go. I think the one thing I think that I need to utilize more is I probably need to, for Pro Wrestling Iowa, I should have created a YouTube page, and I should post my shows there in audio format with the logo on the screen. I mean, there's an area I'm completely missing out on, but I think it just kind of depends on what type of podcast you are. I think if you keep you have your regular shows, doing video content is just even way to grab attention to people who may not always listen to a podcast, but maybe they'll watch your video, like what you do, and then maybe they'll listen to your podcast.
Well, and I think is interesting too is Leo Laporte, the Twit network, which is the largest tech network, podcast network. He actually he does video along with audio, but what he said the interesting part is about 75% of his listeners prefer audio only.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, imagine all that work he goes through to produce the video as well. And like 25%, 30% are, the only ones that are really watching it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, considering the video podcasts that I have seen, it's basically just a bunch of people sitting in front of a microphone.
Well, it's the Howard Stern show. It's Dan Patrick. It's all that, they're recording live on the air, but to me, it always boils down to just another way to try to monetize. Like, if I had the ability and we were all I had a studio that I'd probably record the Pro Wrestling Iowa podcast and throw them on YouTube.
Well, sure. and you pointed out a very important part to that. The Channel 9 show, the E! Show that Howard Stern did, for the most part, it was boring until something happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, since it's podcast day and we're talking about celebrating podcasts and kind of podcast awareness, how do we get people to find these podcasts? Because we kind of talked about how local radio, you have a broadcast area. Podcasts are global, but we could have a whole world of people listening. But how do we get them to us? What do you think is the best way? What are your experiences with trying to get people on board with podcasting?
One thing, I guess, you asked me earlier what I hate about podcasting or the worst. Sorry, probably not hate. That's a strong word. What it makes me uncomfortable is the clickbaiting. I'm going to like your podcast, and so you'll send mine out, and it's tiring because I'm already putting a lot of time. I mean, I have a full-time job, and I'm already putting a lot of time into my own content. And so I think it's a balance. It's a little bit of a game you have to play on social media. Scratch your back, I'll scratch your kind of thing. And that was, to me, like when Brad got us into the EMC podcast network, to me that was a lot easier, because then it's an easy group of people. I have all the shows in a list on Twitter, and so I can promote those shows and retweet them and not worry about like hashtagging Podern Family on everything. And one thing that personally drives me crazy, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, but when you look at a show's Twitter to follower to followee ratio, and it's the same, and it's just a bunch of other podcasts, and so who's listening to that show then?
Right.
So I kind of pride myself on trying to organically build a fan base, but I already mentioned, like hashtagging, being raw. I'm lucky that I have 3 to 5 to sometimes 10 built-in hours of wrestling fan attention on Twitter each week. Hashtagging Raw and SmackDown Live and everything, to the point where I know that most of the people that follow my family and friends don't follow me on Twitter anymore, because my personal Twitter account is no more. It's like completely a wrestling shill at this point.
Well, and it's been said before, and I think it's one of the things that I appreciate most about the EMC network is that Randy actually listens to the show. Like, you can tell in the way that he promotes them. He'll include a little snippet of what you said or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's actually pretty uncommon. Like, it seems like a lot of networks are just kind of a syndicate, and they just repeat, you had an episode come out. Okay, you had an episode come out. Mm-hmm. So basically what you're saying is what they're saying. They're just repeating you. They're just parroting you.
I would never fault Randy for not listening to my shows, though. Like a non-fan sitting through my shows, I think would be grueling. I'd feel bad. Like, my mom doesn't even listen to my shows because she's not into wrestling. So.
Well, I mean, like, even if he doesn't listen to the whole thing, he makes sure that he understands what's actually happening in the show, so that he can speak about it at least knowledgeably.
Yeah. No, like Randy's been a bless. I mean, he made our theme song for our show, and he's been great. It's been a great partnership, and I don't see any reason it ever stops.
Well, and I should point out too, when it used to be just me, Randy, and Jesse, it's a lot easier to listen to an entire podcast when there's only what do we have? Maybe I had 4 shows. You guys had 1 or 2. It was only 6. Randy had EMC,
and then Fat Boy and Captain Llama. I mean, like, I think there were maybe 4 shows total on the network at that time.
So I think everybody listens to everybody's show at that point. Now the network has grown so much, and it'd be hard for one person or even 2 people to listen to every single show, especially when you have somebody like yourself, Dustin, who puts out how many shows a week, and Grawlix obviously being 3-4 hours at most. I mean, it's a lot of it
feels like 3-4 hours. We try to keep it under 2, but
yeah, but I mean, it's hard for any person to absorb that much content.
Yeah, I've put out 3 shows already, and I guess Sunday night, 1 Tuesday night, and 1 Thursday. So no, and it is. I found myself listening to less and less podcasts since I started doing this, simply because for one, I don't like listening to a lot of other wrestling podcasts now, because I don't want someone else's opinion spilling into my mind, I guess, so to speak, about it. After I record, I might listen to back episodes of like Pro Wrestling, Figure 4 Daily and the Wrestling Observer stuff and stuff like that. But I just don't want to accidentally start regurgitating somebody else's opinion because it's in my mind from listening to it earlier in the day or something like that.
Oh, sure. Oh, we run into that a lot with a podcast about comic books, because we're in a hugely saturated field. It's easy to listen to somebody and start just parroting what they said.
One thing that I really try to push, and for the most part, I think I'll say shit or bitch occasionally on my show, but I try to keep it fairly clean, because I think I have to know my audience too. And there could be a 12-year-old kid that gets hooked on it. You never know. I mean, like, I want to make sure it's inclusive. I don't want to exclude anybody, and we're really good about trying to keep our topics to an area. Like, fun fact, I love the Member Berries episode of South Park a couple weeks ago, and I have this great idea. Did you guys familiar with what that is?
I didn't catch it. No. Brandon?
No, I'm sure my wife watches it. She's a religious South Park watcher.
All right. Real quick, they're obviously spoofing on the election, and they want J.J. Abrams to rewrite the Star Spangled Banner so people stop protesting it, and they want him to use his member berries that he used to revitalize Star Wars. Oh my God, Star Wars.
Both.
Exactly, actually. Well, but so the member berries are literal bushel of blueberries who talk, and they all have mouths, and they all are talking at once, and they're like, "Oh, remember this, remember that." It's like, so remember Ghostbusters? That was good. And like they eventually one of them says, "Oh, like remember Reagan?" And then another one says, "Oh, remember when marriage was only between a man and a woman?" And like Randy Marsh is like, "What the fuck is wrong with these berries?" Anyway, long story short, I thought it would be really cool to do a member berries edition for professional wrestling. It got really dark and weird, and it was not our show. Like it didn't feel like it fit, and so we cut it out and didn't use it because I pride it on being a positive place. I don't want to sit. There's too many podcasts out there that are like, you know, fuck this show, like this was awful, blah 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 blah. I don't want to listen to somebody complain about something. I'd rather hear somebody constructively critique it. Right. And I think that's what, in my field, a lot of people are missing the boat on with their podcasts, is that they just get on and they air their grievances. And take a step back and think about, like, if you want to have a podcast, you should be contributing to the genre that you're in. And to me, I think that's, you're taking away and you're actually calling out and bringing light to the negatives, or like how, you know, in professional wrestling, how fake it is, if you want to throw that out there.
Right.
I try to create an air of like, this is fun and it should be fun. That's why I always end my shows with peace, love, and wrestling at the end. Cause it's like, I go to too many shows personally where I see fans get so upset and worked up and angry about like, if a finish doesn't go the way they want. It's like,
it's real to me.
It's still real to me. Damn it. So to me, that's, and I'm sure you guys are similar.
Unfortunately, it's also real to that drunk guy behind me that just spilled his drink on me. A couple, like I got a few house shows.
Coke thrown on me at a house show once, like thrown on me on purpose by a guy because I was booing Triple H.
Wait, excuse me. I want to point out, I had a drunk guy one time spill beer on me, but it was the Sandman, and it was at an ECW house show years ago. So that was like, yeah, that was like, you know, that was like the highlight of my night.
Yeah, that was a badge of honor.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, I got to tell you one thing, man. Dustin, man, kudos to you for having that kind of time, man. I don't know if I could designate as much time as you have a week to podcasting.
I will admit that I've after I stepped back and thought about it about a week or two ago, I've given up some social life for it, but it's worth it. I'm enjoying it, and it's feeding the creative side of me that I don't have an outlet for.
No, I mean, it's great. I mean, awesome for you. You know, when you're, you know, myself, I have, you know, full-time business, and I could travel a lot too for my business. So I have a hard time chiseling out an hour, you know, a week for it, let alone, I mean, I love doing it, but it's tough to chisel out an hour a week, let alone 4 or 5. That'd be tough.
Well, and then you also got to factor in watching a lot of these, like 3-hour pay-per-view, 3-hour Raw, 2-hour SmackDown, watching it and taking notes on some of these shows, you know, like Cruiserweight Classic. That was easy. I was thankful there was a product. I was thrilled to watch that hour and talk to Darnell about it each week, you know. And that's the one thing with professional wrestling, there's always something that could happen that could create a reason for a brand new show. Or breaking audio. You know, if TNA if tomorrow I wake up and TNA's gotten sold to the WWE, I'm calling Kevin and be like, dude, get on. We're talking. We have to put something out. Yeah, you know, for us, it's like capitalize on. Everyone is going to be up this morning talking about it. So let's get something out into the universe and see if we can pick up any followers from it.
Well, you know, I do want to point out too, though, and about wrestling and podcasting. You know, years ago there was only one show. You know, it's totally different than, you know, nowadays with the network. If you remember, being a wrestling fan at one point was expensive, especially if you were buying every
I never really bought WCW, and obviously I was younger at that point, but I'm thankful at least when I was an adult with money, there was only one company to buy. Because I would have been buying, that's $60 for WWE, $60 for WCW, bam, bam. Like,
I used to watch it through the little scramble. Remember when we were kids? It was scrambled.
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
I used
you
to
could hear
watch
it.
through the. Yeah, you could hear it, but you couldn't see it because it was all scrambled. That's why I watched a lot of
That's how I
WWE
watched-
pay-per-views.
That's how it's the Montreal screw job. Think about how confusing that would be if you can't see it, but you only hear it. I remember sitting there just like, what is going on? I'm like 12 years old. Like, what's going on? What's happening? But the network's great.
One of the pay-per-views that I actually paid for was Goldberg versus Kevin Nash.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, a little better than the next Nitro where it was Kevin Nash versus Hogan. But, I mean, yeah. That
to me, I think, is the moment they killed that company. That'll always be where I think the company died, is the finger poke of doom.
Yep, and I paid for the pay-per-view right before that.
Well, did you pay for the pay-per-view where DDP and I want to say Goldberg maybe they went over and the show just ended like right as the entrances were happening?
Can I jump on that for just a minute, Dustin?
Mm-hmm.
I actually read Eric Bischoff's book on one of the
Controversy Creates Cash.
Yeah, I was actually I probably was on an airplane or in a rental car or taxi or something when I was reading it. But with the way I commute, I get a lot of reading time in. What was interesting is that the next day they decided to air the match for free on Nitro. If you remember, that was the start of a lot of the financial problems for WCW because they had to pay back. Yeah, they had to refund all those, and I think that was that was the point where Time Warner started saying, "Well, look at the money that this company is losing," and that was kind of when Eric Bischoff said that was the first step in the undoing of WCW.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's interesting. Like, I guess I want to ask you both as a fan. Do you prefer the landscape as it was in the '90s, where there were three hot, major, viable companies, or how do you feel about the current landscape where WWE's at the top, but then there are so many amazing companies, many rungs below? And I think for me as a fan, this year in general has been an amazing year to be a professional wrestling fan.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't really watch it as much as I used to. I still watch it, but I'm not diehard. I mean, I think part of that is I'm getting older, and not that I'm old, but I'm getting older and with a family and obviously a more than full-time business. I don't have the time to watch. It
is a huge time commitment to be a WWE fan right now. It's insane. 10 hours a week.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse and I, we tweet back and forth that, like, sometimes if there's a big match, like at a WrestleMania, you'll see Jesse and I tweeting back and forth, or once in a while, when there was a big thing with Sting or something like that, we'll go back and forth. But I don't know. I don't consider us really fans, Jesse. I think we're more like observers.
The casual viewer that they're constantly searching for.
Well, yeah, it's like, I don't know. I mean, you hit those eras, and I'm kind of that attitude versus WCW era, and I'm also of the 80s era, like the Hulkamania era. So I'm kind of those eras, but like I do really enjoy right now the way that they have done the brand extension, and I like it better this time around than I liked it the last couple times around, because before it always felt like SmackDown is just the other show, whereas this time around I feel like SmackDown's the better show. And so I'm a SmackDown guy right now. If it wasn't for the New Day, I don't know if I would watch Raw right now.
Jericho and KO.
Well, okay, Kevin Owens. Yeah, Kevin Owens is a gem. And if Kevin Owens was on SmackDown, I wouldn't watch Raw at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I am surprised with the way WWE's been pushing guys about being in shape that they haven't said anything to Kevin Owens yet.
Yeah, he's so talented.
I was going to say he's so good at what he does.
I'm not taking anything away from his athleticism, by the way. But
I think he's a Triple H guy too, so I think that helps. I think Triple H is I think this all is Triple H going to bat for him right now. I think if I had to imagine, I don't think Vince McMahon's plan would have been Kevin Owens, but I think Triple H went to bat.
Well,
and his ability on the mic, his mic skills, his stick skills are just like, whoa, this is one of the epitome of heels. I mean, like, he's doing it as well as Triple H did.
Well, you know, and I think what's interesting is we talk about the eras. I remember being a fan, you know, during the whole Hulk Hogan era and all that. And then I remember I kind of got away from it for a little while. And then Shawn Michaels was really popular, and Razor Ramon, Kevin Nash. And I kind of got back into it. Then I faded away for a little bit. And then I started watching it when the NWO hit. And then I faded away a little bit. Then the Austin thing started. I got back into it again. Then I was away for a little bit. Then when I was following the indie circuit, and I really got intrigued by CM Punk. And then when Punk came to WWE, I really started diehard watching again. You know, and then, you know, now after he's gone, I was watching for a little bit, but I felt like it was kind of getting kind of stale again. But now it's starting to pick up again.
I agree. Well, and I think and I guess I don't want to harp too much on wrestling here and turn this last half hour into the wrestling show, but there's so much talent out there right now. And with the internet, so many companies are able to have a national, global audience. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla selling their DVDs. They refuse to leave Reseda. They can only fit like 200 fans in the building, but I guarantee you more than like 10,000 fans are watching that product.
Well, if you remember, ROH was that way for the longest time. That's the only way ROH made money, was selling DVDs.
The internet pay-per-view has changed the game completely. I mean, it's the New Japan world has given Americans access to New Japan like never before. I subscribe to New Japan World, and it's the best. It's almost it's probably equally as good as WWE Network for me, because I can see all these amazing shows. Plus their relationship with CMLL and Ring of Honor, a lot of their shows end up on New Japan World. Plus now you also have the Fight app, where you can see the Ring of Honor TV show, Paragon Pro Wrestling, NWA from Hollywood. There's a lot of other companies. Evolve is on the Fight app. So there's so many ways for fans to consume content now. To be a hardcore wrestling fan, you're committing 20 to 25 hours a week to professional wrestling.
Back then I was a kid, the only way you got to see ECW is if you had tape traders.
Yep.
You know, my buddy I'd mail him a VHS, and he would mail me something back, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And I sort of miss it's like I romanticize the days of having to struggle to find, like getting Pro Wrestling Illustrated and looking through it, like, who are these guys? I don't know this name. I need to see this guy. Who's the Sandman? You know, things like that. It's today you just go on YouTube and Marty Scurll. All right, I can watch 25 Marty Scurll matches now on YouTube.
Well, I remember being younger, and I'll never forget this. This is a kind of a funny story, and I think Dustin appreciate this, especially since you have a young son. I have an 8-year-old daughter, but my dad, I loved ECW as a kid, and I was always getting the pay-per-views, and my dad would let me get them because they were so much cheaper than WWE. And we live in Pennsylvania. The bingo hall was only maybe an hour or so away from here. My dad's like, we really like this stuff. You know, I'll take you to a show, you know, trying to be a good father. Oh my God. He said,
how old were you again?
Oh, I was maybe young, 12, 13, 14.
Oh, dear Lord.
Yeah, and I was like, and my dad's, you have to know my dad, he's not really into that kind of stuff either. And he was like, Francine comes out with, and my dad's like, he just looks at me and goes, what the heck did I bring you to? And I'm like, yeah, we stayed, and, I mean, he was good humored. I was, it was fun. But the funny part about it is my dad,
how many F-bombs got dropped during that show?
A lot. Here's the funny part. This is the funny part of it. My friend of ours that came with us, my dad didn't know what was going on because my buddy said, well, they give you $1 off your ticket if you bring a weapon. And my dad looks like, what are you talking about? And my buddy bought one of those old IBM keyboards with the keycaps on it. And all of a sudden, I just remember as a kid, the Sandman, or I think it might have been Raven, hit somebody with it, and all the keycaps go flying back in the day of, this is early 90s, so computers were still made of, built pretty solid back then.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's a great memory.
I saw there was a show here locally, Impact Pro Wrestling did a fans bring the weapons match back on August 20th, and there was a used laptop that got used, a box of cornflakes. There was some crazy shit in that match, but the ECW was an amazing promotion. I can't imagine being a father or taking my son there at 12.
Well, and you have to remember too, we're in Pennsylvania, so for us it was like a local promotion.
Sure. Oh yeah. Gosh, I went to one ECW show they ran here in Des Moines, and that was it. But man, yeah, great memories.
I had one other great memory at a show. My dad, I was maybe right out of high school, maybe 18, 19, and my dad decided my mom and my cousin, who was real small at the time, were going to take us to see one of TNA's house shows back when they were running house shows. No lie, AJ Styles is wrestling. I think it was Chris Sabin. Chris Sabin runs at AJ. AJ, I guess, is like drops down. I guess they botch it. Chris Sabin goes over the railing and literally like lands on my dad.
Oh wow!
And I remember my dad. All I hear is my dad. All I hear is my dad yelling at Chris Sabin, "Get off! This chair is not going to hold both of us."
Oh my god, that's awesome.
Spoken like a true dad. I took Connor to his first WWE event. I took him to NXT. Ran a house show. It was headlined by Bobby Roode and Samoa Joe versus Shinsuke Nakamura and No Way Jose. What a first show, right?
Yeah.
So we were in the second row, but the people in the seats in the first row in front of us never showed up. So we moved up to the first row in the second match.
Oh.
So we were front row for this NXT show.
Yeah, awesome.
So many cool moments for him. Austin Aries walked by, and he was healing it up real good, but then saw my son and like went, "Oh, hey, buddy," and went for a high five, and then gave the old hand behind the hair and like walked away from my son. And my son's 4. He's 4. This is his first show. He actually likes Austin Aries. My son's my kid because he likes the heels. He's a huge Darth Vader fan. He's going as Kylo Ren for Halloween this year. So
awesome.
I thought he was gonna cry. I was so concerned for a second. I was like to be like, "Fucking Austin Aries, you just ruined this night because now I'm gonna have to leave because my kid is gonna bawl."
Oh, sure.
Luckily, Connor ate it up, was okay, and then he got No Way Jose's shirt during the main event. So it was an awesome first show for him. But I don't even remember. My first show, I think, was I was up in the cheap seats and I saw like Hogan versus Slaughter in a cage.
Oh my God. The thing is, for me, I got to tell you, one thing that really kind of stunk for me, though, growing up, was my dad, was in the restaurant business growing up. And the funny part is, like, guys like Tito Santana and guys like that used to come into my dad's restaurant all the time to eat and stuff like that. And I remember being a kid, getting to meet, like, the Iron Sheik, getting to meet, Tito, getting to meet all these wrestlers at the time. And at times that we used to go to the Garden and stuff and see that stuff, you don't even hear. I mean, you hear about, back then that was really, but nowadays there's so much of it. I think people are like you said, the kayfabe thing isn't there anymore. When I was a kid, like, seeing Tito Santana, it's like, wow, he's sitting here eating, like, right. Wow, but nowadays, kayfabe being broken now, it's not
social media, I think, has changed professional wrestling because now as a fan, you have so much access to the real person. And it does take away the magic a little bit for it, but I talk a lot about, like, as an adult, my fandom has changed where now I don't watch it to, like, see a story play out, like, so much. I watch it to see the art behind the whole situation. I'm watching for the technique and I'm watching for the right kind of booking and all that. I'm a total smark. I don't think about it from the perspective of being a mark about it anymore, and I think that's where the cutoff happens, is where somebody continues on as a child to an adult as a fan, as if they can wrap, and I'm not saying this about either of you guys, but just like wrap their brain around it being a complete work and accepting that and like loving it for what it is.
But the other thing, though, that I think is really changed in wrestling is incredibly, and you could agree with me or no, it doesn't matter, but yeah. You don't get great announcing anymore like it was.
No, there isn't. Corey Graves and Mauro Ranallo are the two guys. And I don't know if you watch Cruiserweight Classic, but Daniel Bryan and Mauro Ranallo were great during that. They're too overproduced. Vince McMahon's in their ear the whole time. JBL is the voice of Vince McMahon. If you listen to everything that comes out of JBL's mouth and just picture, goddamn, pal. Like, it's Vince McMahon.
but I'll give you a for example. My buddy, and the reason why I brought this up, Dustin, is because my buddy and I were just joking about this. It was a long day at the office, and we were just joking around and so that. And I think I ran into a table or something like that. We were joking around, and my buddy's like, "Oh, down that lower lumbar region, that bread basket, like grill monsoon."
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And then I was like, yeah, I just did it right in front of this capacity crowd here, And then we were joking.
Your solar plexus.
Yeah, and then you were joking like, "Oh, what a maneuver!" You don't
a slobber knocker.
Yeah,
there are so many fun stories. I like as a hardcore and growing up and continue to be as hardcore. I have learned so many fun stories about behind the scenes stuff, but also going to WrestleMania every year for the past 5 years. I've been privy to some after hours partying with some former wrestlers, and I've seen Marty Jannetty drunkenly wade in a hotel fountain. I've seen Marty Jannetty almost get arrested. A lot of things. I mean, I won't throw a ton of people under the bus, but there's so much fun out there. It's like its own little fantasy camp when you go to these things. But it's when the lights go out and the fans are still around and the drinks come out, most of these people don't care. It's so wild.
Well, you're a broadcast journalist.
Mm-hmm. I am. I'm not quite where I want to be though. So I'm not gonna start burning bridges yet.
Yeah, we should. Some of the best lines, I think, were Bobby Heenan when he was. I'll never forget. Like as a kid, I remember asking my dad because like Bobby Heenan, I think it was like Sherry Martel or something like that, jumped in or something. And Heenan's like, "What is she doing there? She's not licensed by the National or State Wrestling Commission." And I remember saying to my dad, "Is there a real because this is back when I was a kid, And is there a real wrestling commission? And then you remember, Commissioner."
Actually still commission professional wrestling. They're athletic commissions. Some states still have WWE have their guys license.
I know Nebraska has like a sports commission, and like my brother does amateur MMA fights, and it's a thing, like they say what you can and can't do, and the timeline for can you have this match or not, and yeah.
There are certain states where and WWE obviously being PG now, nobody blades anyway, but there were states where there's serious no blading laws. Like there was no blood, like for professional wrestling.
Pennsylvania's like that. It's certain now. It is. It wasn't like that years ago, but now you don't get any blading at house shows anymore. They're not allowed.
Right. No, and I think that's for the best. I think anybody. If the blood was what you wanted, then you've started watching MMA instead.
Yeah,
no doubt.
So, but no, I mean, yeah.
But when you look at guys like Dusty Rhodes, rest his soul, or Ric Flair, I mean, those guys, you could tell from the scars in the head, they were bladed a lot.
Oh my gosh, Dusty's forehead was awful. I couldn't. It's hard. It was hamburger meat. It was hard to look at towards the end of his life there. But yeah, bless his heart. The Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic is starting up again, and I haven't watched NXT this week, but I saw over the weekend that Kota Ibushi and Hideo Itami are one of the teams in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic this year. So that wets my whistle pretty well.
Real quick, kind of try to pull it back on track a little bit, but I mean, still, it's still going to apply to professional wrestling. But
Randy's eyes right now are probably so glazed over.
Like, oh my God, the last half hour, Keeper, come on.
Hey, at least we waited till the last half hour.
Yeah, we've done pretty well, I think.
Well, actually, there's no time limit on this, because this is Hangouts. Right. It's only there is a limit. I think it's like 10 hours.
So, like, Dustin, you kind of mentioned like a second show, and I think that's a thing that podcasters tend to run into a lot. Like, we're always looking at what's our next show. Whether it's our next show on the show we're currently running, like our next episode, or what's the next show. So let's just daydream. If time was not an issue, you and Randy had kind of gone back and forth about a D&D show, like jokingly. But if time were no issue, what would be your next show, or would you just expand what you have?
Well, I am. There's a few things I'm expanding. I actually can announce. I'll announce this on here.
Oh, exclusive, ladies and gentlemen.
Exclusive.
Myself and Brady A. Desire, the voice of 3X Wrestling, are working on starting a podcast together next month. It'll be a bi-weekly show. It will be a little less wrestling formatted, but still tied to wrestling since Brady's involved in the business. I guess technically I am now since I've managed him. But it'll just be current events. Get Brady's perspective and character. He'll be doing that as Brady Desire as opposed to his actual shoot name. But we're looking forward to that. But for me, if I could pick anything to do a show about right now, I would do an 8-part series about every episode of Stranger Things. Like I want to sit and rewatch every episode and then immediately record a podcast after each episode breaking down said episode because that was the greatest show that I've ever seen.
So much fun.
So I have a question. If you're managing now, like, did you walk down to the ring with like a tennis racket?
Well, okay, so I haven't told this story either because I didn't want to completely break kayfabe about it on my show. That's one thing I do try to keep. Ironically enough, like I'll talk about WWE and be insiderish and everything, but when I do talk about the local companies, I try to contribute to kayfabe as much as possible, as much as one can. So no, we were supposed to work heel. And I had so many things planned out of what I wanted to do. I showed up I had a suit jacket on with a Star Wars shirt. My whole idea was to have my phone out and be like live tweeting the show and like making fun of the baby face.
Oh, and then you could have thrown your cell phone in the ring like Paul Heyman did, or Paulie Dangerously.
So I had all these things planned out, and it didn't come to fruition like that because we got there and found out they switched things up and they wanted Brady to work baby. So I literally just got to be a glorified cheerleader. I did get involved in the finish. The heel hit a spear on Brady, and for a close 2 count, got pissed, went outside, grabbed the bell, jumped up, got back in the ring, went to hit Brady with it. I hopped up on the apron and snatched the bell out of his hand and said, no, not in my house. And pointed behind me. Brady hit the super kick, frog splash for the 1-2-3, and it was a lot of fun. But I remember I had so many things planned. I hope there comes a point in time where I can actually unveil this character that I had created. And I had I was a douche. I was basically a millennial douchebag was what I was trying to be. So I had like my high top sneakers, a pair of I don't own a pair of skinny jeans, but I got the skinniest pair of jeans I owned. Wore a Star Wars shirt with a suit jacket over it. I was going to live tweet the match and make fun of the guy. Even try to take a Snapchat and send it like while Brady had him in the ropes, but we didn't get to do any of that stuff. But I hope it happens again. I don't know. Nothing's set in stone, but I'd love to do it again.
Brandon, you already have a second show.
But
what would you do if time were no object?
Well, I think I do have the second show, but unfortunately I haven't been doing it as much as I would like to, or even at all, because time has been such a tough thing.
Sure.
I think me, you, and Randy, I would love us to get together and do another Nerd Night. We kicked around the idea about doing a show once a month called Nerd Night.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would be
fun. That would be great. Anytime you get Randy and I together to do a podcast, it's controlled chaos, but it's a lot. It makes for great radio podcast. That would be the show I'd actually want to do because I enjoy hanging out with you and Randy, and I think we all have a good time. And Dustin, please, if you at the time, believe me, we can definitely.
And I don't know if either of you know this. Right before Brad brought me onto Pro Wrestling Iowa, I got a blogger account, and I had started reviewing movies. And I was going to start a podcast called The No Coast Nerd.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I like that.
I was really into that idea. I still have the Twitter handle, the Facebook, and everything. So, I mean, that's something down the road if I were to be able to some pipe dream somewhere where Pro Wrestling Iowa can become my job.
Sure.
I would start that on the side as well. That's to answer that question. I would start a whole new brand if I could.
I'm still trying to get that Nerd Night thing off the ground yet, but I like your name better. But if you really are thinking about it, once a month we could get together and do that. I'm definitely game for that.
Yeah, I would love to do that. There's so many things I don't have anybody to talk to about when it comes to. I'm obsessed with comics and movies and TV shows. Like, I mean, I'll probably stay up till 2 a.m. tonight watching Luke Cage, even though I have to work at 8. Like, I'm just that I want to see it that bad.
Yeah. Let's well we can after the show eventually when we were friends on Facebook and all. If you want to really seriously think about that, I've been looking to do a show with somebody because most of the shows I do are solo shows. So I mean, if you're interested in that, I definitely would be. I'd be like maybe like a once a month thing or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Covering everything. I'm down. I'm way down. Randy, if you're listening, there you go. We just put another show. There you go.
We just made another show for the network, and that's something I want to bring up as well since we're trying to get back on the topic, Jesse. We're trying.
Thank you.
Now we were, and I want to kind of piggyback something off of something that you had said, Dustin. You loved Art Bell. I love huge Art Bell fan. I don't think I would have gotten into ham radio or any type of radio if it wasn't for Art Bell. He's, in my opinion, one of the greatest of all time. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that he actually had to retire due to a health issue.
Right.
But the funny part is I downloaded a lot of his old shows, and I have yet to find a repeat one. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's been on the air for 46 years, 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm listening right now to all his old shows, but it's a shame. But he always did a show solo. And when he tried to bring in a co-host several times, his audience really was like, no, this isn't right. Mm-hmm. I know like you guys, Grawlix does, a couple people. I know you have a co-host. I do most of my shows solo. It makes sometimes a little more difficult, but what do you think? Do you think a show that is solo is,
I think it's awkward. For me, me to do. I don't mean it's awkward to listen to. Sorry. I wanted to reiterate that. Like, I realized as it came out of my mouth, I was like, no, not like awkward for you. For me, I did one. My very first WWE post show was after Extreme Rules, and I did it by myself. And I really flourish with somebody to play off of, and I never wanted to do it alone again. I've done like a breaking audio news by myself, but that's like I write something out and I'm just like reading. Like, This just happened, bam, like this, stay tuned, come back on Thursday, we'll have more information as it becomes available, kind of stuff like that. But there's a few people, like, I guess it really, to me, depends on the person's skill level, their voice, and their knowledge. Like, I would not listen to a startup podcast with one person. I want somebody to do it by themselves, and I think, Brandon, your voice is radio tailor made. I'm a little hoarse. I sound like I'm in a cave just naturally, but you have a good voice, and that's why I think you can get away with that. Like it really boils down to the voice for me.
Well, I appreciate that.
I guess like what you say is I have a bromance.
You rendered him speechless for a moment. That was impressive.
That never happens. Ed, coming to you today, hits 105.3, the Music Machine, coming to you live. You talked about that before, and I do that radio voice all the time, joking around, because those old school disc jockeys were amazing. The way they would get the rev up time perfect on some of those songs, that's like an art. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Dude, there's a guy, I'll shout him out, if you're in the metro area here, Des Moines, Clutch. He was on Laser 103.3. He's on KGGO now, 94.9, I believe. That's one guy that if I am in the car, if he's on the radio, I will listen to. He's probably one of the few people left on the radio that I will stick around and listen to that channel, even if a song comes on, just because I want to hear Clutch when he comes back.
Let me tell you, man, I'm not a big oldies fan, but if I hear Cousin Brucey's voice on the radio, like it's just, I mean, that guy is such a living legend. Like, I mean, and just the way he handles himself on the air, it's just like, and the hits just keep on coming. Like, I mean, he just got it down, like it's amazing.
For me, I think, and to go back to my answer about the question about the voice, and I think you brought up wrestling announcers, and I think this goes for sports, whether it be baseball or anything. I mean, there's a reason that Harry Carey was so popular because of the voice. The voice just resonated with you, and I feel like shit because I can't remember his name, but the voice of the Dodgers just had his final game. He's been there for 60-some years. I cannot think of his name right now, but and I'm also a Giants fan, so that's probably why. So since this is an expletive show, fuck the Dodgers.
I do want to point out, you're talking about baseball. I found
it. Say East Coast over here.
Yeah, I do want to point out though something kind of funny. You talk about baseball.
Say it. I feel like
but
an asshole.
The other day I was the peak of baseball season in in like June or July. I have Sirius in my car, and I was on a long ride, and I was flipping through the baseball channels just trying to find something to listen to, and all of a sudden I hear Tony Schiavone's voice.
Yeah, he does Braves. He does the Braves, right?
Yeah, he does the Braves.
Yeah,
Wow,
yep.
awesome.
Vince Scully, the announcer.
Yes, yeah, that you
iconic,
said.
iconic voice. I felt bad. I was like, I've got to do this man justice. We cannot have an international podcast day, and I completely piss off the name of one of the greatest voices in broadcast.
Now Jesse is in an interesting situation because he does a solo show, turning cartwheels
podcast. Yep.
I apologize. I should know your show name because I do listen to your show.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. And you also do the Grawlix, so you're actually kind of on both sides. You do a solo show and a group show.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I definitely understand and respect what Dustin is saying about doing this solo show, because when I am with Randy and Mel, I can just riff. I can have just kind of an outline in front of me, and that's good enough. But when I do the solo show, I have to have it more fleshed out. I have to have a script, because you're right, it's so weird. You're having a conversation with yourself.
Right.
But what I want to point out though, and Jesse, you have said this, and so has Randy, that a lot of times my show is better when I'm by myself.
Yeah, you know what you're doing. You've got a formula, or you've got a rhythm, a reflex, and it shows. And I think that radio voice also plays into that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds natural for you.
Well, like I said, I grew. Like I said, I spent most of my life, with radio stuff, and so I think I idolize those guys. You could tell I idolized Art Bell and even Stern. As crazy as Stern is, I mean, he is a genius when it comes to how he handles himself on the air.
Who's your least favorite DJ of all time? I'm going to throw Mancow out there. I hated Mancow.
Honestly, Bubba the Love Sponge.
Oh yeah, he's awful too.
I can't stand him. He just doesn't. At first of all, I never actually got to work with him when I was at merger happened, so I never really got to deal with him. But I heard a buddy of mine stayed behind, and he said he was really nasty to work with.
Well, I mean, he filmed Hulk Hogan having sex with his wife and then sold it, and then got Hogan sued and all this shit. He's a great buddy. Good guy.
Yeah.
Brother.
I don't care for Bubba the Love Sponge. I think I do hold Art Bell in the highest regards because he always was solo, and anybody that can do the same show for 42 years and keep it fresh like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we got to mention Casey Kasem. Like, to me,
yeah.
that's the voice that I grew up with. I mean, just
man.
like that's the voice of radio to me early on in my life. And for me too, I must pay respects to Monsoon and Heenan and Jim Ross. Those voices, I can go to sleep. Like, I can't fall asleep to a wrestling show voiced by Michael Cole. I hate Michael Cole. But, like, Jim Ross is like a lullaby for me. And so is like Monsoon. So is Monsoon. Like, if I can hear him, I'll drift
Ventura.
Ventura, not so much. Vince,
not so much.
either.
He doesn't have time to bleed, so.
Well, I think it's interesting too. You talk about that, especially, when you talk about some of those guys, they weren't at ideal time slots. Like Art Bell was at a really crummy time slot, but he made it work.
Well, and
the same
it was his niche. His niche is the paranormal.
Yeah.
I mean, and and that's where I know him from. Did he have other shows outside of that?
He did Coast to Coast for close to 35 years, and then he went to Sirius for a handful of, a year to do a couple other things, and then he went out on his own. Night in the Desert, which he has since retired from due to some health issues. But I mean, he to be on that late at night and have the success he did with it in a time where on-demand audio wasn't a thing yet. It was pretty impressive. And then when you look at some of the other greats, I always liked Opie and Anthony. I respected those guys. They really had a great run. Them and Stern at K-Rock were some of the best years for K-Rock.
Can I talk really quick? We mentioned Stern so many times. How do you guys feel about the movie Private Parts? I love that movie.
I think it's hysterical.
Pig vomit. Like, forever, Paul Giamatti will be pig vomit to me.
WNBC.
No,
I
you're not
think
saying it. You're not saying it right. It's WNBC.
In my mind, I'm saying it the way you're saying it. Okay, I'm going to gargle with this now, and we're going to.
I think it's a testament to his talent, the fact that there is a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, like how many people are going to go to a movie about a radio personality? But they did. If you build it, they will come.
Do you believe that the E show in the 90s is responsible for really, really blowing him up to a point? I mean, that's where I first discovered Howard Stern.
No, he was big before the E show.
Nationally, though?
I was going to say.
Was he syndicated in the Midwest? I mean, like.
By that point, he was syndicated in like 40 different markets by that point.
Okay.
We didn't really know who he was, though, here in Nebraska and Iowa. I mean,
I don't think
that was our gateway.
Yeah, well, I'm in Pennsylvania, so it's a little bit different. He's always been
East Coast. Yeah. Sure. No, I mean, I remember that E show, and then seeing the movie, I had no idea. Like, when I saw that movie, it was the first time I realized how long he'd spent on the radio, and like, I just thought he was a new TV personality, to be honest. Like, I know all about him now, but without the E show, I would have never known him.
I mean, he's a very bright guy too. He's a Kumho Cum Laude graduate. I mean, he's a really bright guy.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God! In the movie, when he's got the perm and the fucking mustache.
Oh yeah.
But you don't understand. He had that. Horrible mustache. Even at WNBC. No. Even when he was at WNBC.
Oh really?
He still had that horrific. But he didn't shave the mustache and grow the hair out until maybe right when he started doing the E show. He had that horrible look all the way through the 80s, and it was bad.
Oh boy.
He even admits it. But I think when you start talking about radio guys, though, like I said, you have to talk about all those guys, because those guys kind of paved the way for what we're doing right here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically, they did.
Oh yeah, without question. Kasem, yeah. I mean, even his kid is good. What do you guys think of Ryan Seacrest?
Is that New Year's Eve yet?
Is it?
Okay.
He's not my favorite, but like, kudos to him for doing what he's doing.
Yeah, I would have preferred Carson Daly.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why, but I've always liked Carson Daly.
It's not TRL.
That lovable loser kind of thing. Like, he feels a little more everyman than Ryan
Seacrest looks like a robot.
All he can do is TRL and debut Backstreet Boys songs.
Well, but he had to put up with Eminem too. He had him on his show a few times. I think he even had Tom Green on his show.
Oh my gosh, Tom Green!
Like, if you can laugh that off, then I think you get extra points in my book.
What was that movie? Freddie got fingered when he worked at the cheese sandwich factory.
Yeah.
So, Dustin, before I know we're going to eventually be wrapping up, but I want to pick Dustin's brain for 1 second about something.
Yeah,
the other day, I was on the network watching some classic wrestling. And as much as we're talking about commentators and we're talking about voices of that, watching the Yokozuna when he gets slammed for the first time and listening to Vince's capacity crowd, here he comes, the one and only Lex Luger. Oh, he hit him in the head with a 6-inch steel plate in his arm.
Yeah.
A 6-inch steel plate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Lex Luger really had a 6-inch steel plate in his forearm.
Really?
So he really did have the steel plate.
Yeah, absolutely. He had some stuff in there. He like shattered his arm.
What I think is interesting about that, though, when you actually look at all that, I always really like Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette. I always like the guys that could talk and cut a promo better than the wrestlers.
Royal Rumble 92. Bobby Heenan's work during the Royal Rumble match, if you remember, it was won by Ric Flair. He became the champion. It was the first the Royal Rumble match was for the title that year because it was vacant. And the whole match, Heenan was managing Flair with Mr. Perfect, and Heenan is screaming at the top of his lungs like, that's not fair to Flair, totally in the pocket of Ric Flair this whole match. And you'd think that would be really annoying or just take away from the match. But Heenan's near heart attacks every time Ric Flair's about to go over the ropes reminded me a lot of the match that Brian Kendrick had with Kota Ibushi and Daniel Bryan calling it when he was clearly solely on the side of Brian Kendrick, and it brought so much more emotion. And even Heenan could, being an asshole and just being a dick, could draw that emotion out of you as a listener and as a viewer. And that is lacking severely in pro wrestling today.
Yeah, but he, in my opinion, is the best announcer to have never called a single wrestling hold.
Sure. Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't ever remember Heenan. I mean, just some of the things you come out with. Like, I remember in WrestleMania 9 when Mega Powers beat IRS and Million Dollar Man, and they're taking apart the briefcase and all that. And, Hogan's throwing all the IRS papers, and Heenan's like, that's confidential information. And all of a sudden, Hogan pulls out a brick, and Gorilla's like, look at that. And he's like, what? You never know when you're going to need a brick.
Yeah. Well, no, that's like the heel announcers now don't spend enough time justifying or like the actions or coming up with excuses, and that's,
they just say
that's
it's because because he's a champion or whatever.
Well, and I think Michael Cole was having a great heel run there until like Jerry Lawler had a heart attack at ringside.
Oh yeah, dear Lord, that was scary.
I mean, that pretty much killed his whole heel character.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Up to that point, he was a heel.
The plastic box he had at ringside to keep him away from Jerry Lawler. Yeah, I loved it.
Well, he was saying, he actually talked about it on Primetime Sam Roberts show when he had Michael Cole on. Michael Cole, when they brought Jerry in the back, people were coming over his how they could talk to you in the headphones. Michael, you have to prepare to deliver the worst.
Oh my God!
Like, you have to be prepared. You may have to deliver bad news.
Dear Lord, that would be so heavy to handle. Your friend,
almost as bad as
you know that like Cole and Lawler are close, and that would just be awful to deal with. It'd be like me having to deal with somebody telling me Kevin was about to die or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Well, you have to realize too, it's a different business now than it was then. If you remember when Owen Hart died, admitting they would have stopped the show and I think refunded everybody. But during the height of the Attitude Era, when ratings and pay-per-view were like, WWE was on the cusp of bankruptcy, WCW, they're basically, they had to keep going. But if refunded, they might have been out of business.
Well, no, that pay-per-view happened after WWE had taken over and the ratings began. But the thing is, and the reason I believe to this day they didn't end the show, we were at an unprecedented time in wrestling where everything was possible, where there was nothing off the table anymore. There were Miss Kitty showed her breasts on live pay-per-view at one point. I mean, we had Mae Young giving birth to a hand. We had some crazy shit going on in professional wrestling. And unfortunately, there was a potential chance that you really dealt with the fans in attendance not believing what they'd seen. I think I talked to people who were there. I've met people who were at the show, and they had no idea what the hell was going on, like live.
Well, there wasn't internet then either.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There was the proliferation of information at the time wasn't there. And so you had people at home, even the people at home watching it, was this an angle or not? Like, it was like the unfortunate perfect time. I know that makes me sound like a huge idiot to say like people thought that this might have been a story, but there was that legitimate idea that people felt that. And I think that's not the way the business is anymore. I mean, if people are going to believe it now. And I'm sure that there's people out there who are probably sitting there listening to me right now saying, what the fuck are you on? But I've talked to people. People didn't buy it. Like the company was very different back then.
When I watch now, I wonder, was that a real bump or not? Because we've seen enough real bumps lately. We've seen career-ending moves. We saw Sting go into retirement at a pay-per-view. We saw Enzo get hit with the rope and sustain a concussion. So
I was there live at that show. That was worst. That was one of the worst feelings.
That was scary, and part of you is like, is that real? Well, and it's got to be real. I knew
it was real.
That.
But
that one you knew was real because you saw Cass looked horrified.
Right.
And I remember being in the crowd. And you had a sense of panic because you're like, oh my God, did I just watch a guy die? For one. Yeah. And that's a reality. That's the reality of it. And then two, you're like, oh my God, like that's Enzo Amore. He's amazing, And luckily he's okay and everything worked out. But as a fan, that is a really intense moment when you see an injury like that live, and you're just like, it's like the fun stops all of a sudden. You're just like, shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
you know,
I was there the night that they blew up Vince McMahon's limo. Because I was at the arena because that
Oh,
was taped
jeez.
maybe well, it was taped maybe
what
half
was the
hour.
reaction? Thank God. What
Well-
was the reaction of the crowd?
Well, we all were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But the thing that we were all like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But here's the thing that killed it. Outside, there was police saying, and by the way, just so you know, this is a work. Please don't call us.
Jeez.
Because, well, no, what was happening was this was before the iPhone came out. It was right when the Blackberries were popular.
Well, I know where you're going with this because everybody
Right,
started calling
so-
the police.
Everybody started calling the police. So as we were walking out of the arena, and how long did it take you to walk out of the arena? Maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes? They were police stationed there saying, hey, you're going to don't call the police. This is a work. So it kind of killed it when you were at the arena for it.
Sure.
But then a week and a half later, 2 weeks later, you had the Benoit thing.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Horrible timing.
Again,
Horrible
it was like,
timing.
oh, is this another work?
Well, do you know that, and not
Well,
to
and it was
trivialize
also-
anything,
oh, is this another work?
Sherry died. Sherry died the next week. Like, it was the Vince McMahon limo. Sherry died. Benoit the next week. So, like, two really poor timing issues right after they killed Vince McMahon. So, yeah, was the arena did everybody just kind of look at each other like, what the shit did we just see? What was it like in there?
Yeah, it was. I remember there's an eerie feeling at the arena, but then as you were walking out and the police turned not worried about it, the eerie feeling was over because you knew it was a work. But you didn't know being in there it was a work.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they could. I mean, to me, as a viewer at home, you're just like, huh, all right. But I guess like being there live, it would elicit a different reaction for sure.
Yeah, but you have to understand the whole arena shook when that thing blew up.
Really? Okay. See, I'd always wondered if that got filmed earlier, like, or the night before, something like that. You know, like if they did that some other point in the evening where there wasn't the people in the building or something, because they've done that before where they film something else and they play it like it's live, but it's not.
Yeah, I think that's how they do it now, right?
Yeah.
Like that's much more immersive.
Well, that happened all the time back in the day.
Mhm.
Like a lot of those bits with Austin flipping the cars over, dropping the beams on the DX bus. That was all filmed days in advance.
Right.
Promos at WrestleMania and stuff like that. They would actually film the promos like a week ahead of time.
Uh-huh.
And then what they would do is and then they would just play it like it was live.
Right.
Me and Gene Oakland said there were many times where he had nothing to do at pay-per-views because he had filmed all the like ahead of time.
Well, he had time to drink then. That guy, he is a boozer. I'll tell you that.
You guys want to
he
eat
still
one of
has
my
a one-
hamburgers?
He still has a 1-900 number you can call for wrestling info.
Oh, geez. Of course he does. Did you guys ever call the 900 numbers, the Nitro hotline?
Oh no, I didn't have that
think
kind of money.
everybody did that.
Yeah, it's
99
like, here's
cents a minute, you know?
told, who's coming to Nitro next week? Reports say a major name debuting next week on Nitro. Tune into Nitro next week on find out. It's like, oh, Jesus. So,
Well, I had to tell you, I've been watching those old In Your Houses, the ones that Razor Ramon, the 1, 2, 3 kid, and I love like okay, here we go, Razor Ramon. Coming, he's enjoying his title run. Up front, we have Todd Pettengill. Todd, what do you have for us today? Oh, Vince, I have some great Shawn Michaels T-shirts. Call 1-800-TITAN me. 1-800. I'm like, oh, this is pre-internet.
Todd Pettengill.
Just for the.
That's like.
But by the way, I did call some of those little Titans.
They had like.
If you call those.
Do you remember?
If you call those old Titan numbers, you do get. I tell you that this is a WWE number that's not in service.
Oh, that's funny. Do you remember the show Livewire?
Oh, vaguely, yeah.
So it was a studio show inside like WWE's production center. It was hosted by Vince McMahon originally. I think Todd Pettengill was involved, Sonny was involved, and Jim Cornette was involved. And it was a call-in show, and you could call into it and ask questions. It was like the first time WWE started acknowledging some insider stuff. It was like in that like 94 to 97 period. And I remember there was a show where Paul from Philadelphia called, and it was Paul Heyman. And
oh, nice.
And got into a little you know, it's a word.
He had to advocate.
Let's be real. Let's be real. It came across as such an amazing shoot that I still love that moment because Vince reacts well to it when he's like, wait a minute, this Paul from Philadelphia, like, is great. Well, those are the kind of things I almost wish they would do more of. And I think that Talking Smack, I don't know if you guys check that out on the network.
Just
it's
snippets,
a great show. It's a great show because it's giving the talent an opportunity to go out there and create a persona. And I think that's what's lacking in WWE today is like these people, some of them are granted the opportunity to be themselves. Like Seth Rollins can be himself. You know, AJ Styles. Bray Wyatt gets to do what he wants to do pretty much. But a guy like The Miz is limited to what they're giving him. And he gets like that promo he cut on Daniel Bryan a few weeks ago was career changing for him.
For sure.
I think a lot of people stepped up and realized we've been giving The Miz a lot of shit. I still hate the character, but I can't deny the work he's putting in and how great
his matches have been much more interesting.
Let me put it to you this way. I will never have any sympathy for The Miz. He's married to Maurice, for goodness sakes. To Maurice. He will get no sympathy from me.
Fair enough. I really, if you listen to my show every time I bring him up, I shudder because I go, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but yes, The Miz had a great match tonight. His matches with Ziggler have been fantastic.
Yeah, I've liked those. I'm a little worried about the career-ending angle that they're going to take now. It's like, I don't know if I believe it. But
yeah, we'll see.
But what gets me about The Miz, though, okay, he basically got to start on MTV's The Real World and then transitioned into wrestling. So I have really no sympathy for him. That's why, it's.
I always look at it from
now. You got me going.
Well, I do want to transition because I do want to say one thing I forgot to say on my show this week, and it'll be too late. It really bums me out that I love the New Day, but it really, really, really bums me out that Gallows and Anderson have become fodder for the New Day. I feel like they've already missed the boat on those guys. It's too late already. And I think all because they realize, and I think after this loss, they still should. Yeah. Go pair them back up with AJ. Heat everybody back up again, and market the club. You're missing out a boatload of money by not marketing the club more. And like the fact that they still wear the logo.
Finn Balor being on injury, like he could show up anywhere.
Right.
Whenever he comes back, it won't matter. I mean, it would be a huge surprise no matter where he shows up.
Well, it does make you wonder if Gallows and Anderson would have been more involved in Finn Balor's story, perhaps. If Finn Balor hadn't gotten hurt. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think it's time to pick up the pieces, but then though and move them to SmackDown, I think you're completely right. But to me, they're too talented to have ended up just getting beat down by New Day, who I think the only reason they did it is because WWE realized they're so close to breaking Demolition's record.
They almost need to swap the Wyatt family back to Raw and bring the Bullet Club to SmackDown.
Bray Wyatt is, to me,
what do you mean they're going to break? What do you mean they're going to break Demolition's record?
Demolition. Like obviously the World Tag Team title, the current version of this title is the one that started on SmackDown in 2002, is the lineage for this title that is being held by the New Day. But the overall every tag team title variation in WWE history record is 478 days by Demolition, and the New Day will be going into Raw at 407 days, I believe, this Monday. So they're going to break that record.
They're a three-man team, just like Demolition was, too.
Right. So I think the New Day are breaking that record, which, you know what? I like that. I think they deserve it. It's just still sour taste in my mouth that Gallows and Anderson at the expense of them.
Right.
So thanks for letting me get that in.
All right, let's try to wrap it up real quick because I think we've crested our 90-minute, our typical 90-minute runtime for the crossovers.
We're about on that 2-hour mark right now.
We're about the 2-hour mark. Is Randy tweeting you? Is he like, you gotta wrap this up?
He's not saying wrap it up. No, not yet. But don't give him any ideas.
EMC World Wrestling Show.
Let's wrap it up with one last question. Let's say you can book anybody, and but with this in mind, if you can book anybody for an interview on your show, and it's that social proof thing. You're looking for the interview that can maybe just push your podcast into a few more people's iPods or phones or whatever they use to catch their podcasts. Who are you looking for that you think it's gonna push your brand? It's gonna push your message. It's gonna push your mission. Who are you looking for? as your awesome interview that would get you those extra viewers or listeners?
Jesse, can we? That's a tough question because who could help your brand, or who would you want to interview the most? Because they're two different things.
I would shoot for the one, shoot for, don't go for the personal thing, because who would I want to talk to versus what's going to help my show? Totally different. But let's stick with your show.
Mine's easy. I already have a goal by episode 100. Seth Rollins.
That'd be awesome.
It's Pro Wrestling Iowa podcast. We should have the only Iowan to ever hold the heavyweight championship of the world.
Oh, that would, that's perfect.
Well, that's totally not true. I guess like Frank Gotch. Okay, of the modern era. there's some way back in the era days. But more realistically, right now I'm working on getting James Ellsworth on the show. I reached out to him and he responded, so I'm waiting for a reply back now. But if you guys don't know who that is, that's the jobber from the first Braun Strowman match, the guy that has no chin. Just awesome. Guy that everybody fell in love with on the internet. He's a complete jobber, but he's a promoter out in Maryland. And I looked at it. He only had about 12,000 Twitter followers. I said, I think I can get this guy. And he replied, so we'll see what happens with that.
Nice. Brandon?
Well, I think... See, I'm kicking. It's such a tough question.
Do you want a minute? Because I know mine. Because I wrote this question. So
Steve Jobs brought back to talk to you.
yeah. We'll do the same to bring Jobs back. It's a tough question because I guess there's so many people in tech that have been so influential, and with the way the tech industry changes, somebody that may be good today, maybe next month may not be the biggest draw. I've met a lot of guys. The one person I would love to get on, but he every time I do try to get him on, he just doesn't have the time and he apologizes, is Steve Wozniak.
Oh, that would be
founder of Apple.
Yep.
Yeah, he hasn't said no. It's been like, I don't have the time right now. I'm sorry. He's a ham radio operator. I have talked to him on the air once or twice. So I have talked to him, but I've never actually had him on the show. Probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I would like to get him on the show. Like I said, I have talked to him, but I'd like to get him on the show. And I think he'd be a number one pick. Jobs probably would have been first. It's gonna happen anytime soon.
Maybe at least Michael Fassbender.
I think okay, so for our show, for the Grawlix podcast, I would go with I think Randy being a huge Batman guy, I would almost go Frank Miller, because he's infamous for the GD Batman. Like, I would want to throw somebody on there that we would have to Grawlix. That or Alan Moore would always be somebody that I think would just drive things off the rail in a weird Grawlixy way.
Absolutely. Two really talented guys.
Can we throw one more question out there? Who would we want to interview if we could interview anybody?
Yeah, might as well. It's a kind of a sister question to this anyways. Yeah, who
Go
would
ahead,
you
Dustin,
want?
you were first before anyway.
Oh, actually, give me a minute, because like now that you're asking me to think out anybody, and so I can take this outside the pro wrestling realm. Give me a minute to think about it.
I would want Joss Whedon.
Go ahead, Jesse. I'll
Joss Whedon, I think, because he's been involved in so many different like nerd geek chic projects, and he's dealt with so many different personalities, both from the I'm managing a television show, managing a major like Marvel Cinematic Universe movie property, right down to his infamous run on Astonishing X-Men as just a writer. I think people would think Kevin Smith, and I would never pass him up, but I would shoot for Joss Whedon.
Jesse, I'm going to say I'm surprised you didn't pick Stan Lee.
I would love Stan Lee, but I don't know. He's not creating right now, and that would be the main thing. He would be incredible to talk to.
You wouldn't pass him up if he called you, right?
Oh God, no. He's an icon. But I think Joss Whedon is somebody that's creating things right now, And I think that's what I would want for the Grawlix podcast.
I guess if I was going to interview anybody, it probably would be probably the legendary Art Bell, only because he's a legend. I grew up listening to him. He's influenced me so much between getting me into the radio, ham radio. He's a ham radio operator too. I just would like to have him on the show just because he's a legend and because he's somebody who really kind of influenced my life. Yeah, I don't think, and I hate this. Somebody say, "Oh, yeah, somebody like that influenced you." If you listen to him as many years as I did, he was a ham radio operator. He was a really bright guy when it came to tech. He knew how to work his brand. He was just somebody who I don't think I would have gotten into tech if it wasn't for him pushing me into radio technology and all that kind of stuff. Just because he influenced my life, I'd like to have him on the show once just to kind of give a thank you.
I think that for me, it would actually be Kevin Smith. I grew up. My learning to be cool with accept who I was as a fanboy and as like a nerd. I really owe it to Kevin Smith's films. I love the View-esque universe, and I just get a vibe from him that me and him could have a good conversation, and that I just would love to pick his brain and talk shop and just talk about his life and how I can strive to be more like him.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, he would be my first choice if he isn't already on like 100 podcasts of his own. Like that's the only thing that stops me short of Kevin Smith, because you're absolutely right. He's super influential, especially in podcasts.
That would be just a selfish pick of like, I just want to get to know Kevin Smith.
Sure.
Well, and I understand where you're coming from, because I could tell you if there's one person I really, besides Art Bell, that I want on my show, it would be Adam Savage. Because Adam Savage is the patron saint of geekness. His career myth busting and working on science and going to Comic-Cons and all. I mean, he has his own shop. He does, all the kind of prop making he does.
His attention to detail is incredible.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a subscriber of his premium content. I think it's probably some of the best $40 I spend a year. Being somebody who is a maker and being somebody who made his own radio unit, worked on computers, built, practically, very, I'm a handyman. I build a lot of stuff. I work on cars. Getting to meet Adam would be just awesome, because he embodies geekness.
Right there, I really wanted to start singing, "He's a man, such a man's man."
Oh, William Regal's repackaged gimmick. That was horrible.
All right, guys. I feel like we could keep going forever, and if you want to off air, we can, but we should probably wrap this up. So let's go ahead and tell people where you can be found. Where can people find your podcast?
All right. Well, I'll take the lead here. You can find me on Twitter at Smohawk and on Instagram at Smohawk, and you can find my show at Pro Wrestling IA on Twitter and by searching Pro Wrestling Iowa on Facebook, or going to prowrestlingiowa.net.
Brandon?
My website has links to everything. I'm all linked up like that. It's just thetechnologygeek.org. On there you can find all the links to my podcast. You can find obviously all of my blog posts. We have daily blog posts, sometimes more than one a day. So if you're somebody who likes to read and follow what's going on with tech, like I said, we do post daily on there, and plus our weekly podcast. Again, that's thetechnologygeek.org. And Jesse, where can they find all your stuff?
Thank you, Brandon. You can find us at grawlixedpodcast.com, which is the main show that I'm on. I also do the Turning Cartwheels podcast, which is at cartwheelspodcast.com. And you can find everyone's shows, including a lot of awesome content that we weren't able to feature tonight, at electronicmediacollective.com.
How you doing?
Guys, thank you for joining me tonight on such short notice so that we could enjoy and celebrate International Podcast Day. Happy day to you.
You're welcome.
Pleasure being here.
All right, guys. have a great night, and we will catch you next time on the next crossover episode. Pay attention for that.